Welcome back, AP World students. Today we're going to talk about major world religions and world regions. World regions are going to be very important because oftentimes when we talk about world history, we're going to talk about things that happened regionally. We're going to talk about things that happen in East Africa or things that happen in South Asia or East Asia. And so it's going to be really important to know what these world regions actually are so you know who we're talking about. World religions are also very important to know. They're going to spring up in different parts of the world in some of these regions, and they're going to spread to others. They are going to be impacted and as well are going to impact the spice tea themes of world history. Religions are going to be responsible for some of the political structures that you're going to see, social structures that you're going to see, and decisions economically and even between different civilizations that you're going to end up seeing. So first and foremost, you actually have this map on your notes, but I just want to point out a couple of things here. We're going to end up practicing this next time. We're going to have an activity where you practice over and over again, really just labeling these because they're so important to know. What you'll notice is that we don't split Canada and the United States. That's just North America. The reason for that is because we don't actually necessarily focus on American history. You'll hear about America, you'll hear about, just some of the things that happened over there during world history, but we don't focus on that because that's more US focus. You see Mexico is actually kind of part of a couple of things there. You've got over on the right your Caribbean, but then you've got your Latin America, which actually includes Mexico. And then over in the top middle, you've got Europe, which is actually split into East and Western Europe. Then you have North Africa, West Africa, Central Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa. You cannot call it South Africa because there's actually a country called South Africa. So when you're talking about the region, you have to say Southern because that encompasses a lot more. The Middle East is between, it actually includes Egypt as well, but it's between Africa and South Asia. South Asia is mostly where you'll talk about India this year. East Asia includes places like Japan, Korea, also going to include China. Then you have Southeast Asia and Oceania, which includes Australia. So again, we'll practice those more in depth, but just so you can kind of start to dabble with the names, get used to them. All right, so when we talk about religion, we are talking about an organized system of beliefs, ceremonies, and worship. This is part of the cultural theme, but it can influence other themes. There are usually three distinct types that you're going to hear about. One is called monotheistic, the other polytheistic, and the last one non-theistic. Mono means that there is one, so monotheistic is one single god. Polytheistic means that the religion worships multiple gods, and non-theistic means that they don't worship a god, it's more a system of religious values. Today, like I said, we're going to look at these different world religions at a glance. We're actually going to look at them in order of oldest to newest. So like the first that we know of in history to like the most recent. Since it's at a glance, it's going to be very brief. We're not really going to go in depth into everything, but you are actually going to get to do that as we start talking about different groups and different civilizations. We'll go a little bit more into these religions. This is just to give you a little bit of that foundation. So first up, one of the oldest that we know of is Hinduism. It's so old that we actually don't know who the founder is. The idea is that multiple groups came together and formed this belief system based off of a lot of different types of beliefs. It starts in South Asia, which is again over by India, in about 2500 BCE. BCE means before the year zero. It means before Common Era. Common Era is basically everything after the year zero. It is polytheistic, so it believes in multiple gods, and not only multiple gods, but many forms of one god. So there's actually, it's interesting. Some people will say that it's almost monotheistic, but for AP reasons, because there's so many different gods, they classify it as poly. They believe in karma, reincarnation, and Hinduism is really, really going to impact the caste system in India, which we'll end up talking about soon. This idea that what you've done in a previous life is going to reflect how you're going to live your next life. Our next one is called Zoroastrianism. That one is actually founded in the Middle East about 1500 BCE. This is a major cultural contribution to Persia. So if you've ever heard of the Persian Empire, Zoroastrianism is actually the major cultural belief system there. It is monotheistic, and their major beliefs are things like free will, right versus wrong, final judgment, a lot of themes that you actually end up seeing in terms of the right versus wrong and such in a lot of other religions. It's going to influence other religions in that region, which is why it's also so important. Some of the ideas of right versus wrong, final judgment, free will, those are things that you're going to see in other religions as well in the Middle East. Judaism is one that most people have heard of. The founder is Abraham, and it is monotheistic. This one is also in the Middle East, and it started about 1500 BCE. Some of the beliefs and background, some of the things that you'll hear in terms of terminology. Place of worship is considered a synagogue. That is the name for the building. They believe in the Ten Commandments. They use the Torah, and actually there's a few other sacred texts. AP loves talking about the fact that Judaism, to be Jewish, is considered an ethnicity and a religion. You can practice the Jewish faith and be Jewish, but to be ethnically Jewish, you have to be born into a Jewish family. So you have to have ancestors that are Jewish. When we talk about Judaism, we talk about the Jewish community. It is a community that is going to have a long history of oppression, is going to be pushed out of homeland after homeland after homeland. It's going to be kind of a continuous theme that you're going to see. And so that's something else that AP loves to look at, is how that has impacted those of the Jewish faith, but how those of the Jewish faith have actually impacted the regions that they moved to. The next one we'll talk about is Confucianism. Confucianism is founded in East Asia. It's founded in China, about 500 BCE, so still pretty old. The founder is Confucius. It looks like a cute little grandfather in that little statue there. It is non-theistic, so what this means is that they don't typically believe in a god. Confucius is not considered a god. He is just he's the founder, he's the leader. This is going to be really important because Confucianism stresses strong family relationships, something called filial piety, which is like your role within your family. What is your duty within your family? It also stresses social order and harmony. So this idea is that you don't need an oppressive government. What you need is a good government. You need a government that actually knows what they're doing, and you have to train them in order to know what they're doing. So if everybody in society knows their place and follows through on that, then you're actually going to have a harmonious place to live. And we'll get more into that as we talk about classical China. AP loves talking about that filial piety, also about how that kind of leads to this patriarchal structure in early China, and also their impact on political structure. Confucianism, once we get to the Han Dynasty, is basically going to be a theme until you really get to communism. Buddhism is next. Buddhism is very tricky to AP students, so I want to throw this out there. Buddhism does not originate in China. That is something that AP students love to say, even though that's not correct. Buddhism actually originates in India, in South Asia. It will migrate over to East Asia, but it doesn't start there. The founder is Siddhartha. We also call him Buddha, so you can also write Buddha. It is considered non-theistic as well, traditionally. Again, that means that Buddha is not considered a god, although he is more of like the leader to getting on the path of enlightenment. So he's very influential, but he's not considered a godlike figure. The basic beliefs are things called the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. We're going to look at that on the next slide. But your ultimate goal is to achieve enlightenment. Buddhism was really appealing because it appealed to anybody who was suffering or oppressed. It rejected this idea that you had to be placed into a social hierarchy, that people at the top are better than people at the bottom. It also welcomed women into their monastic communities, so it welcomed women in lower classes into religious order, giving them another place rather than just in the patriarchal society at home. And it's going to spread because of the fact that anybody who's lower class that is feeling unhappy is going to look at Buddhism and think, this is maybe a religion for me. It speaks to me because it acknowledges my suffering and says that there's a way things will be better. So to look at that, here at the top, you'll see the spread of Buddhism. It actually becomes more popular outside of India than within it. But here are the Four Noble Truths. Number 1, life sucks. This is, again, kind of taken out of context here. Number 2, life sucks because you want things. So number 3, if you don't want your life to suck, stop wanting everything. And number 4, follow the Eightfold Path in order to stop wanting stuff, to then be happy to achieve enlightenment. So if you ever see this, it looks kind of like a ship's wheel. Each of like the little handles is part of the Eightfold Path, and you follow that path and then you end up achieving enlightenment and your life stops being sucky. It's very academic. I promise they actually have better noble truths. This is just kind of making it fun. All right. Making it lighthearted and fun, as it were. All right, Christianity. Christianity is another one most people have heard of. Christianity, this kind of surprises people if you haven't really studied world religions. Sometimes they think it's a lot older than it is not very old, actually. The founder, you could say Abraham, because technically Christianity is a branch off of the Jewish faith, which we'll talk about in a second. The major difference, though, between Judaism and Christianity is where Jesus fits. So Christianity's founder is considered here Jesus because Jesus is seen as the Son of God, whereas in the Jewish faith, he is not considered the Messiah. So that's kind of where that breaking point between the two is. It's founded in the Middle East in the 1st century, so after the year 0. Their major beliefs: Jesus is the Messiah, he's the Son of God. And you have to believe in his death, resurrection, and that he went back to heaven, and that eventually he's coming back. So that's kind of where Christianity and the Jewish faith divide on that major point. Their sacred text is the Bible, but again, things like the 10 Commandments, a lot of those similarities you're going to have from the Jewish faith. And like Buddhism, Christianity becomes popular because it welcomes women in lower classes, and is going to spread on trade routes. So people are going to see, here's a religion that acknowledges my suffering, even though I'm lower class. This might be something that I'm interested in, and so a lot of people are going to join. When we look at Islam, Islam is next. Islam is actually the other relative of Judaism and Christianity, which again is something that surprises people. It is actually considered like the next step after Christianity in a way, like the next piece, I guess. Next edit, if you will. The founder of Islam is Muhammad. It is considered a monotheistic religion, just like the other two, and it is also centered in the Middle East, a little bit after Christianity is founded. The belief system centers around something called the 5 pillars, which we'll go into a little bit more in depth when we talk about the Islamic Empire. But the 5 pillars in general are faith, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, which is like where you give to the poor, for instance, and a pilgrimage that's called the Hajj, where you actually go and you go to Mecca and go kind of on this, journey, or pilgrimage, as it were, in order to reconnect with your faith, those of your faith, and Muhammad. The major belief is that Muhammad is the last prophet of Allah. Allah is the Arabic word for God, and the followers are called Muslims. So what happens here is Muhammad actually acknowledges that Jesus existed, but Muhammad is considered the last final true prophet, meaning he carries the last final word of God. So it's interesting if you look at the lineage. Judaism gives way to Christianity. Islam kind of focuses on those faith practices as well, with its own kind of variation, and it even acknowledges them. Their sacred text is called the Quran, and AP loves the fact that when they talk about the Islamic Empire, they talk about how it spreads and creates a lot of unity throughout the Middle East. Also, we'll push out Zoroastrianism, and then we'll talk about how it brings a lot of scientific innovations and literacy and all sorts of things to different parts of the world. you can thank them for a lot of our hospital practices, actually. Things like quarantining and even eye surgery. They had like the earliest cataract surgery. Anyway, you don't need to write that down. I just thought it was cool. All right, Sikhism. Sikhism is one of the younger ones. Sikhism is founded in South Asia. So again, think India in the 16th century, which basically means 1500s. So again, really young. It is monotheistic. And the major beliefs: importance of good works, live honestly, give to others. Shares a lot of similarities with Hinduism. But honestly, if you look at the belief systems of all of these, a lot of them have similar faith patterns or similar stories, or similar moral codes. So kind of interesting to see how they differ and how they're similar. AP loves connecting this one to other religions. This one won't be talked about as much as the others. It's just kind of interesting to know that you've got this younger religion that popped up in the 1500s and how it's kind of taken religion another step. So that's kind of AP's focus on that one. And then last but not least is animism, which technically we could consider older than Hinduism, but we're not really sure. With animism, we don't know who founded it. We don't really know what type it is. Usually it's polytheistic, but it could also be non-theistic. And usually where it takes place is in sub-Saharan Africa and in South America. So when we talk about the Mayans, when we talk about early African civilizations, when we talk about the Aztec, the Inca, usually they're animistic because there's a lot of practice with ancestral worship, spirit worship. With animism, there's this focus on spirits and souls in inanimate objects. So for instance, you could have thunder gods, or you could have like the god of the stars, or you could have animals that are also like spirit guides or things of that nature. That should say linked, not liked, sorry. It is linked with pagan groups, but it's not technically pagan. So a lot of pagan groups are animistic in that they worship things like nature, but animism can also be ancestor veneration instead. So you'll see a lot of that when we talk about early Africa and when we talk about early Americas. AP loves how animistic beliefs, shamanism is going to impact those regions. Even the Greeks, honestly, you're going to see a lot of these sorts of things. Animism is kind of an underlying belief, honestly, in a lot of locations around the world. It just depends on what time period you're looking at. So just some interesting graphics here for you. You can see world religions by percentage. I think this was as of last year, so it might have changed a little bit. And then this world religions on the map. So again, it kind of shows you where they're at now. This map, again, shows you where they're at now. It doesn't show you where they originated. If you see the little star here, you might want to, on the map you have on your notes, if you can somehow add like a little text box and write, within each region one of the religions that is founded there, or if you want to like make a little table and list it out. As we go through each world region, we're going to also talk about the world religions more in depth as we continue our practice in history. All right. Well, thank you so much. Please make sure to now go to your challenge questions, and we'll talk to you next time about early human history. Have a great day.